The show starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the CoinLaunchLounge. If it's your first time coming in, thanks for stopping by. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. Today we've got Genius in the house for an AMA, and Robert, the founder. Everything to the project is in here to introduce it to us. Robert, I'm going to do, if you could do me a favor, introduce yourself, introduce the project to the community. We can take it from there.
Hi, thank you. My name is Robert Genito. I'm the founder of Genius. I've been in early Bitcoin mining, early 2011. Ran a mining co-location service for some number of years. I worked with the Dash Core group to help them get to number 3 in the charts and was very instrumental in that and getting them on exchanges all over the world. And I've worked with many exchanges. And here, over the past 5 years, I've been researching a new token that is designed to hold value and grow value over time. It's called Genius. And at the moment, it's in its pre-launch as a pre-token, and it's the only thing majorly up in a bear market. It's up over 120x in price in the last 5 months.
Brilliant. And so if there's anybody else from the team that you want to introduce before we dive into any technicalities or...
Yeah, here we have Digital Diogenes, and he's a community member that has been helping the whole community market and promote this in digital.
Hey guys, yeah. So my name's online handle is Digital Diogenes. My name is Zack, helping with marketing and advertising of Genius. My background is I have over 15 years of really corporate experience in marketing and advertising. Ran a large firm in Florida before kind of switching gears here and moving into crypto full time. But I am also a Bitcoin kind of OG, been in the space for over 10 years. Speculated on a number of projects throughout the years. So everything from Bitcoin in the beginning through kind of the adoption of Web3 and everything that's meant in terms of altcoins and whatnot. And for about the last 5 years on the side, I've run a crypto consulting firm, mostly for, frankly, older individuals who have been interested in crypto, wanted to learn more, how to get involved, how to set up wallets, be onboarded, et cetera. So I've given a number of presentations and talks to some kind of wealthy individuals, wealth groups that have been interested in crypto, but couldn't really understand it and wanted direct experience with it. So I'm helping out with Genius and really excited to be here, and thank you for having us today.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. We're glad to have you guys. Robert, is there something you wanted to add there?
Just my thank you, my gratitude. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, we're glad to have you guys. So I've gone through the white paper, and obviously Marshmallow is the one that set this up. He's been in the community introducing Genius to us for a long time now. At least it feels like it. Now, some people have not taken the time to go through and actually educate themselves on the white paper. So I'm going to act like my brain is completely fresh of information. And I'm curious if you guys can just explain in layman's terms some of the things that you guys have put in place that are unique and proprietary that you feel we should highlight here. A good explanation for the community on how the ecosystem works.
Well, sorry, we were just going a little back and forth through text here. So I think the absolute best way to explain us is Robert's initial vision. What he's been working on for the last 5 years is how can you design something that is designed to go up over time? Can you design a monetary financial asset that's designed to go up over time? So everything that, as far as the actual mechanics, the technology behind it, everything is designed to do that. So kind of from a fundamental technological standpoint, it's essentially a staking token with some tons of additional features and functions that all promote that. So we've got the kind of major staking function, which we actually like to call miners internally. So when you set up stakes, we actually call them miners. And that has to do with our own kind of thinking on how they work, how the general crypto and then the larger financial space are going to look at these kinds of tools. And then a number of ancillary technologies that are going on behind the scenes to maintain those stakes, maintain the value of Genius over time, as well as provide liquidity without providing any sort of detrimental circumstances towards pricing. So sell-offs. How do you avoid sell-offs while allowing for liquidity? So the two major features that do that are the auction system, and that's a system that basically is you've got a stake or a miner in place. How do you access liquidity when you need it in case of an emergency if you have a stake that's locked up? And then secondarily, the stability pool, which is a system for incentivizing essentially traders and other kinds of speculators to be monitoring Genius and making certain decisions, for example, purchases on the open market for arbitrage opportunities, and again, for propelling that price forward. So that's a big, there's tons of features, as you know. We actually have a list of over 35 kind of individual pumpamentals, as Robert likes to call them. But in a nutshell, staking token, everything underneath the hood designed to, have that price maintain stability and increase over time.
Appreciate it. And Robert, some of the things, because this is your brainchild, correct, Robert? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the smallest unit is a Genito. Is that right?
Yeah, little tiny Genito.
Little tiny Genito. So I suppose if you could give us a little background here on how we got to this point, what was your motivation for creating the project and what got us here? I mean, if you got into Bitcoin mining in the early days, I would imagine you're not doing this for financial gain, or at least not primarily. So if that's the case, what got us here? What's the story?
Yeah, I've watched many successful coins over the years, of course. Over the last 12 years, it's seen the first altcoin come out, Litecoin, and so I was in the corporate space of the cryptocurrency industry for like 8-9 years, and while watching these over and over again, seeing what problems are going on, what problems need to be solved, right? So I hear that many had their failures, many had their successes. Or like even Bitcoin itself, there's things about it that are wildly successful and things that are a failure. But over these last 10, 12, et cetera years, everyone is trying to make their own new money, or many groups are trying to make their own, new instant payment system, or trying to make their censorship resistant network or social network, information network, et cetera, transaction network like Ethereum. And so about 5-6 years ago, really, just really came together as I was helping many different tokens improve their ecosystem and improve their onboarding, their fiat onboarding, Dash cryptocurrency being one of them, going from number 40 in the charts to number 3. And I could see here that that there were so many things that were being done right, and it was like everybody wasn't learning from each other. So Genius over the last 5 years, and especially over the last 2 years of developing the tokenomics for it and implementing Genius with the code side, had taken many of these. You had learned from many of these successes and failures. Learned that people want to make people obviously are putting this great effort because they want new money or they want new way of payments, etc. Well, really, really, what people do want is they just want to hold their value. If they're saving money, they want to hold value with that, or they want to appreciate their value. They want their value to appreciate. That's really what has been going on for hundreds of years with governments and then corporate institutions, is providing some kind of product like this. Excuse me. So Genius was designed from the ground up with all of these successes from other cryptocurrencies, and avoiding many of the failures and solving a lot of the problems and failures that other cryptocurrencies haven't solved. And so here you have Genius. It's standing on the shoulder of giants. Launch date relatively soon. It's been developed over 2 years. There's been a lot of thoughts behind this, a lot of talented people. Yeah.
Okay, and the stage you're at right now, so you're in the legacy phase, right? The legacy Genius token. Is that correct?
Yeah, the pre-launch phase, yes.
Pre-launch. Can you explain to us kind of what has gone on in the pre-launch phase and what the Legacy Genius token is?
Yeah, so the the Legacy Genius token, I think it was March last year came out, and really is just a token that doesn't do anything. Yeah, it was just a promise. It's like, hey, here's this token coming out, but here's a token to represent it. Okay, so what's great about that? Well, over a year ago, it was proposed that, hey, when this token comes out, one of the biggest problems that every crypto has is its beginnings. There's a lot of problems with awareness, problems, even problems when first, offering or first distributing the cryptocurrency. A lot of people find the first distribution, unfair. So this legacy token, this pre-token came out as a way of saying, hey, if anybody is willing to put up liquidity for this to help, early solve this chicken and egg problem, if anybody does this, and it works out, that's the risk that might work out great. But so there was so many liquidity providers came together to do that, and your biggest worry was one liquidating on the other one. But many came together and they heard the idea of Genius. There was no white paper, but heard the idea and thought like, okay, well, that would be really interesting if there was a token because we all want stable coins, but we all also want appreciated value. That'd be great if some token could do this. Like, awesome. I could tell my bank to screw off with the savings account. I could get away from the 401k or the Roth IRA that, depending who you are in the United States, most people, your fee for having the Roth IRA is the same or more than your account. So, so people, they heard this story, they thought it was interesting, and 98% of all the liquidity providers did as they said they would. They got the token, they put it up, and so the legacy token is a functionless ERC20 that was, like, I guess you could say, is promised that when the Genius token comes out, when the official Genius launch happens, that Legacy Genius token will be able to be used to mint the new Genius token.
So like a 1-to-1, like people will be able to swap the legacy for the new live Genius token?
Not like a 1-to-1, but the ratio itself has to do with like a fair and community agreed upon ratio of like the supply. Is the Legacy Genius supply much different than the official Genius token's initial supply? So it's not 1-to-1, but you could say it's supply ratio to supply ratio, or it's proportional.
Okay.
Digital, would you like to comment on that as far as the multiplier and such? Because this is timely information people will want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ratio, the way that's going to work, it is spelled out in the white paper. We actually have a specific area now on our Telegram, because this does get asked so much. It curves down over time, but once we launch, within the first 4 days, if you decide to mint, like if you own Legacy Genius already, you mint it into New Genius, it's 1,000-to-1 ratio. So for every one legacy, you'll have 1,000, the final Genius token. And I wanted to say that going back to kind of the beginning of this, that is how I got involved. Robert and I have known each other for a long time. He talked to me about his idea. He approached me to become a liquidity provider. So I was one of the first liquidity providers of the legacy token. And to me, it's been an interesting a challenge for a number of reasons. It just, because what Robert was trying to do is essentially create a whole pre-market, like what we effectively are doing right now, talking about this project that we're about to release. But this was a year and a half ago, before the code was done, before the security audit that is now basically done was done, before a number of things had come to fruition. How do you solve the chicken and egg problem of, okay, we want to launch a project off the ground, we want to make it as fair, open, quote unquote democratic as possible. So what we did as effectively liquidity providers is said, okay, we'll get these tokens, make them available to the open market, and then as people come learn about the project, they can buy them up. It'll be market based and help grow the project over time. And I think it was so far has been one of the most interesting, most effective ways to do this. In that currently we have, I think it was about 1,000 people have sacrificed, which we can talk about what we did as far as sacrifice phase as well. But 1,000 people have sacrificed. We've got 1,000 holders currently of the legacy token. So we haven't even launched yet. So it's a super decentralized way to essentially, and it's amazing credit goes to Robert for inventing this, really, because I've never seen it before. But one of the cruxes or the issues with it was, how do you communicate this? Because this is very complicated. What, I bought this and it doesn't do anything, and then there's what are you guys trying to do here? And so it's very simple. It's just there's a token that mints into the final token once we launch. And I would say at the beginning was the highest risk area for a lot of us liquidity providers. Would this happen? Would all these things come to fruition? And knowing Robert for so long and knowing his background in software development and running major tech projects, I had a ton of confidence in him. And it's all come to fruition, and we're all really excited. The community's grown exponentially. I mean, we were at 0 back in April, May, so it's been really exciting to see.
Okay, and as far as the actual launch of the main token, that's right around the corner, right?
Correct.
And what does that process look like? I mean, how far away are we from that? What is still left to do?
Well,
when should people expect it, I suppose?
That's great. we had a launch plan for October 9th, and things look extremely good for that. Like our level of organization, our level of just documentation and communication, and just our work effort. So this looked really, really good for October 9th. Had independent security auditor, a third-party audit, began doing an accounting audit. So there were a lot of eyes and a lot of talent on this. However, just like as annoying as it is, just like when you're about to take off on an airplane, and then you hear from the pilot that everybody has to kind of sit for a little bit, and they're not going to take off yet because an engineer of the engine, found something that they want to make sure is not going to be a problem. That happened with us. So Genius as it is, it's done. You can use the beta quote on testnet, and that's at beta.geni.app, beta.geni.app. You can come into the Telegram room and ask for some of the beta coins. And yeah, when you go to the app itself, you'll need to have MetaMask. You'll need to connect your MetaMask wallet. You'll also the app itself will ask you to connect to one of the test networks. So one of the networks that isn't using real value tokens, but is using something that's considered just a test. And and so that's around the corner. We had a countdown, and it's to be determined soon. And as the development team and even our own research and our independent security researcher, as we look into that, and we basically prove that isn't a problem and that we have great coverage for that, then we will launch. And of course, we also have the Certic, a well-known security firm, Certic.com, and CERTIK.com, and they're helping us with this investigation. That way we can have a very safe token for myself to use and everybody else to use. Everybody's looking to use this. Safety is, as you know, incredibly important, much more important in the blockchain world. And we take that super serious.
Yeah, proper pen testing and making sure. I mean, even the things that we are under the impression the most secure, sometimes the right person finds some type of loophole, right? So yeah, yes. I think that's super important.
And nobody wants that to happen, right? So.
Right, and so you guys are you're not in a rush, is what you're saying. You have the community, you have the people that are behind you and rooting for you, and you guys are not in a rush. There's no need to rush it. You need to get it to market when when you feel it's ready to get to market, right?
Well, it is. It's also. You could say not in a rush, but we've given no expectations on this project. However, I have given expectations on when for a launch for people. Right? I'd say like, hey, this looks like we're going to launch on this day. This will be fine. So it has our top priority, all of our top priorities.
Launching, for that matter, right?
Correct. There's like you could engineer and polish something for a very long time, but here it's super polished already. While development has gone on for a year and a half, really it's been developed for nearly 5 years, of writing out the plan and then having implementers and developers follow that plan. So it's quite polished already. If we see anything that is even remotely a concern, for example, what had been discovered about 12 hours before launch, and then looked into more, and when it came to about 2 hours launch, and then 1 hour launch, it was like, ooh, we really got to hold this off. But so it's in a great place. But even the tiniest concern, we can't have. It's a product that has to work, and people are, people do want this to work out well, and we want it to work out well for people too.
Obviously, right? I mean, you want the best interest and the best case scenario for the token and for the project, which is what a good leader would want for the token, right? And so, that being said, I mean, we mentioned pumpamentals once, and I see in here we have burnamentals, pumpamentals, and performance rewards. I suppose this kind of bridges me into the next section here that I wanted to cover. But if you could just explain what the different pumpamentals are that you guys have implemented into the token, maybe focus on the ones that you feel are proprietary. Because I know there's a lot here, but it's hard to cover everything in an hour, so I want to just touch the main topic points.
There's a lot, and I just excitedly pop in here. There's a lot, and these are all novel, and they're all, I guess you could say some of them are related to other successful tokens, but pretty much all of these are novel to Genius itself. So it's not just like a, hey, this is a great thing. It's like a, hey, this is every possible pumpamental.
Well, and I think, there's some things, very specific things like, unstake fees being calculated in such a way that we've been able to reduce gas fees by upwards of 95, 97%. There's a lot of little things, but I think the two major things are, maybe you could even say three major things, are the way we do staking. So we've actually what we call mining. We've broken that up into two types, and then also the two additional really major features of the system being the auction system that's built into the contract, as well as the stability pool that's also a part of the contract, which obviously you'll be able to access and can access today via the beta dApp. So I think those three things are probably the biggest differentiators. Whereas like everything combined, there's tons of smaller things, the way Robert set up the OA, the way there's an exodus function. So like, let's say for whatever reason, something, it's like taking Robert's analogy previously, let's say we're mid-flight and something goes wrong, a wing breaks, we can actually pull up a plane beside us, offboard people into that plane, and then let the old plane crash. And there's Robert's geniusly set up that, pun intended, just in the off chance anything happens, because it is software, it is the blockchain space. We are at the cutting edge of technology. So he's very forward thinking. That's one other thing I wanted to mention as far as kind of that delay in launch and how important this is. And it's something I've actually learned going through this with Robert now over the last 6-7 months as far as development and marketing, and year and a half in Tampa as a liquidity provider, is I'm so happy to see the level of commitment to long-term development. And like there's real, this is a product, but we think we know how this product is going to be used, Robert's time horizon has been anywhere from 20 to 50 years in terms of long-term use. So it's just been a pleasure to learn how serious security has been taken on this project. As I've invested in some others where just as a speculator, just as an investor, sort of aped in, but certainly did my homework. But still, certain things happen, project falls apart, and the whole thing was devastated, and thousands of people lost tens of thousands or millions of dollars. So, really nice to see your experience on this project. So, with that said, though, I think those three major things: so the way we do stakes, the auction system itself, and then the stability pool. Does that sound about right to you, Robert?
Yeah. Well, not only that, if I can compile, what you're saying here into what this is about, the page that Brian was showing on here is that there's three core fundamentals that people are interested in. I mean, so Genius, any crypto or token has to know its audience really well in order to reach that audience. So we have to know our audience really well and hyper focus on that audience's, wants. And a lot of this is something that, I've personally wanted and have wanted for at least 12 years that I've been in this crypto world. And so, well, how do you make, I mean, this is for people who want trustless passive income. Trustless as in it's decentralized. They don't have to get on the phone with someone because something's not working. It's just, it's in front of them and they're in full control of it. They don't have to trust another human being. But passive income. Genius gives you passive, genius, just like with Bitcoin mining. And the fundamentals to do that are, you have to have ways to, well, first of all, you have to get the supply out there, right? You have to get the supply out there in a way that isn't favoritism and a fair access for people to get that supply. The second thing you do need is you need an increase of demand. There has to be demand there in the first place. And the third thing is, if supply is too great, you do need ways to decrease that supply, decreasing that supply in a way that makes sense. Because as we've seen, just willy-nilly decreasing supply doesn't work. So as I said, you got to be able to increase the supply fairly. That's number one. Number two, increase demand. It's number two on the list, but also a very number one concern. And ways to decrease that supply. These are the three fundamentals that Genius hyper focuses on and strategizes to do properly. Now, one of the last things that Digital Diogenes, Zack here, mentioned is our stability pool. But before you can really understand the stability pool, you got to understand, what is it like to use Genius? Well, to use Genius, to use that, first of all, you acquire some Genius, but you acquire it, your use for it is to create a miner with it. And that miner will pay you Genius. So a miner can kind of be used I'm using metaphors here, but you can think of it as a savings account, for something in the future. You can think of it as a long-term retirement account. That's how I intend to use Genius. But here you create this miner, and when you create a miner, you create it with the software, right? This isn't like Bitcoin mining where you have to, you need sysops knowledge, or once needed sysops knowledge. You're using you're using a lot of electricity, running a lot of hot machines. This is, when you create a miner with Genius, you declare an amount of Genius that you're going to lock up, and you tell the system how long you're going to lock that up for. And the length of time that you lock it up for is going to give you much more of a bonus. And then what your miner then gets created based on how much you're locking up and how long. And then from there, every single day, that miner has a certain share of the daily reward pool, and it gets paid every day, that daily share of that reward pool.
And that's how the stability pool is born, right?
So then next, with those fundamentals, so the stability pool incentivizes, because people got to get your genius somewhere. So you get it from a decentralized exchange, or somebody gives it to you as a gift, right? Or you work for it, etc. With the stability pool incentivizes users or even traders to deposit collateral to back Genius. So you could say Genius is backed by US dollar. You could use that metaphor even, or will be backed by US dollar. We'll see. But with the stability pool, it incentivizes users to deposit collateral, and they receive a miner in return, a miner that will generate Genius for them. So think of it like you can lock up your DAI or your US dollar coin and receive Genius rewards for locking that up.
Okay, makes sense. And okay, so I suppose, Robert, what I want to touch on really quick is the differences here. Gabriel just said in the chat, so this basically works like Hex plus pools. And I know that Marshmallow and I have had this conversation in private, but I just want to hear how you explain the answer to this question. Is this Hex plus pools? I mean, what else is different here that is making you guys, have more benefits, a better system than what Hex has provided?
I think I've had this question a lot, and I think it's better to talk about what similarities there are, because there are an incredible number of differences and there are a very small number of similarities. The biggest similarities with Genius and Hex is that Genius and Hex both weigh your time, use your time as a factor, as a strong factor and a strong weight into your rewards payout. And that's it. Now, when it comes to the many problems in Hex, Genius solves many of these. If, for example, one problem that a lot of people don't really see as a problem, they experience it so much and they just consider it life. One problem is, let's say 95% dips. One problem is that, in a market, as markets as we have today, the people who get in early and buy early, when they decide to liquidate in the future, their selling pressure, if the token has rise a lot in price, like for example with Hex, right? Let's use Hex as an example since it came up. Many people consider this like the normal thing that happens. You buy at, let's say, a penny, and then when you're selling at 50 cents, you are adding an incredible amount of market pressure, 50 times the amount of pressure to throw the price down, right? And with Hex, you have your time that is a weight here, right? However, what you also have is you have a lot of people who believe that once you're locked in on Hex, they believe that they can't get out. Because after all, if you go to the official Hex app and you go to end any of your stakes early, it doesn't tell you what your fees are. It just gives you this big scary warning sign that says like, hey, this is advanced functionality. You better watch out. You could lose everything. But then the reality is most people's stakes lose like 1% of their principal, 5% of their principal, 10%, 15% of their principal, whatever. But who cares about that if they just doubled in price? So if you want to know what your fee is going to be, you have to use other apps. But the point is, with Hex, many people discovered that and they dumped on the price. Okay, no problem. People have a right to do that. But this is something that you can say exists with every token, right? Or maybe, I call this like a growing divorce reward. And what the idea is that the richer and richer, one of the spouses becomes, you could look at it like the other spouse kind of has a reward to get out of there, right? Especially if things aren't going positive. Well, if you were Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, you would say that was quite a massive reward to divorce Jeff Bezos. You can exercise your desires and et cetera elsewhere. So here with Genius, Genius solves this problem. I believe solves this problem. But Genius has something in the white paper called the penalty counter and the penalty multiplier. And I look at it differently than a penalty, but a penalty became the best way for us to explain this. What Genius does is, let's say the price of Genius is rising and rising and rising, and you have many people who are maybe using their Genius miners as like a certificate of deposit or to get dividends payouts. But you have these Genius miners that said that they would, run and lock up their coins for 1 year or 2 years, whichever. So in a situation where the Genius price is rising and rising, this becomes an incentive for people to liquidate, because they're excited. They're like, oh wow, like my value went up. Let me just liquidate now or something. And of course, this is for people who want US dollar more than they want crypto. But so as users are ending early, right, the current users, the current miners, their rewards are restructured in a way to incentivize them to follow through with their commitment. And that doesn't exist in Hex. And because that doesn't exist, you see these 95% dips, which unfortunately, you could say that's a lot of people who are not too happy with their user experience. So Genius intends, and there's been a lot of research on this, Genius tends to solve a problem that not only is with Hex, but also with Bitcoin and also with any stock you can think of.
Well,
So, yeah, go.
Brian?
Of course.
And there's other dimensions to this that of the underlying system that add to that, because it's like, okay, if you the 50x gain, that's fantastic. You want to get out. Why do you want to get out? You want to get out because of liquidity. So there's both the stability pool and the auction system are additional liquidity tools, ways to access liquidity without affecting the larger market price, without affecting the whole community. But getting back to that user's very first question, I would say as much as I think, especially at this point, we've received a lot of backlash from Hex. They're very anti anything new, even though Robert, myself, a number of our community members are Hexicans. Right. We're those dirty Hexicans. I do love my refined beans.
Viva Hexican.
But they don't like anything that even resembles what they've done in any way, shape, or form. Not that, and I will say, Robert has talked to me about this product for 5+ years, long before Hex was out. So it reminds me of the story of Newton and Leibniz and how they invented calculus at the same time, like 1,000 miles apart in like the 1600s. The world was ready for this kind of tool, and Robert took his own experience and also what he saw with others, and really adjusted it and accounted for all of these problems. But I'll say, from a communication standpoint, for technical people, for anybody that's already understands Hex, it is a great analogy. And we've actually created some documentation as far as the major differences specifically between us and Hex. But like Robert said, there are more differences than there are similarities. I think the biggest thing is you get rewarded based on you locking up and making a commitment. Really is the single most. That's a huge principle, but that's basically what proof of stake is everywhere. So with few exceptions, and so the tokenomics fundamentally different. The way setup's different. All the functionality, like as far as the additional functions, the auction system, the stability pool, the way we calculate end staking, like Robert said, you will actually have access to understand what you're end staking if you're end staking early. Consequences are, if you're ending a miner early, what the consequences are, whether they make sense for you or not, or if you're going to decide to liquidate your stakes through the auction. So yeah, that's tons of differences between us and Hex, but we don't generally like to say that, although we do love Hex. Hex is great, no problem with the Hex community or RH, but we seem to get a lot of flack from them. So
I'd say the, in full transparency too, the other similarity that Genius and Hex have is a similarity that Genius and Hex have with Bitcoin. So, so may as well not chat about that. But that other part is there being a reward pool, a daily reward pool, and people have people get a share of that reward pool and receive rewards every day. That's the other one. The differences are, for fellow hexagons out there, I would say check out the white paper, because you'll understand this very much, and you'll understand the differences. And if you're somebody who's been in hex for a while and you're a hex OG, if you're a maxi, you're always going to have difficulty opening up something new. But besides the maxi part, you can understand this. I mean, even if you are a maxi, you can understand this, and you'll find things very interesting about it. And even two of the four tokenomics developers, myself being one of them, two of them had a lot to do and were very instrumental with the tokenomics of hex itself. So Genius is standing on the shoulder of giants here. And those giants I would consider to be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, Steam. I mean, some of them might not be giants today. Steam and hex itself.
Okay. Somebody just asked in the chat, I think we covered this briefly, but if we could just cover it again really quick. You guys already explained the stability pool once, but if you could just kind of cover it one more time really quick. And then he also wants to know how the APY will differ between the stability pool people and the typical advanced miners.
Okay. Yeah, let me grab that. So with the stability pool, I think to understand the benefits of the stability pool, it's good to know the different modes of mining that there are here. Now, we've talked a lot about there being two different modes of mining, but really there are three. There's basic mining, advanced mining, and collateral mining, and that has to do with the stability pool. So these serve slightly different audiences. The basic miner, right? The basic miner, if you have to end early, you won't lose interest. Sorry, you won't lose your principal. So, just like with a certificate of deposit, right? When you end a certificate of deposit early, typically you lose an amount of interest, or you lose all of the interest, or you lose some of the interest. And so you can think of that like with basic mining. However, someone who has a basic miner, they have, they give up some really sweet rewards for that security, for that, knowing that they can end early anytime and their principal won't suffer, right? And then you have the advanced miners, which when it comes to the stability pool, that all works the same. But the advanced miners, they're, when you create an advanced miner, whatever amount of time that you promise, that you commit to, you're going to want to stick to that. You're going to want to know, I can definitely stick to this. Because you can lose principal should you end early. But the advanced miners, they must run for a minimum of 90 days. Basic miners have no minimum. And you could say even a minimum of 180 days, because the advanced miners cannot end early unless they're running more than 180 days. And they must be at least 90 days long. So basic miners receive the basic rewards payouts, the planned rewards payouts, which is 4.23% yearly. And that's if 100% of everybody is mining, they're going to receive on average 4.236%. If only 10% of people are mining, that comes out to like 40%. But hear me out. So this advanced mining, not only do you earn your share of the basic, the basic rewards, but any penalties that anybody paid as a result of ending early, whether it was penalties on their interest, penalties on their principal, etc., you also earn a share of that, and that's pretty sweet. Now to the stability pool. That's what helps this make sense. With the stability pool, you're depositing collateral, or you're somebody who's redeeming Genius from the open market for that collateral, which we can talk about that later, but that creates a one-way arbitrage that's going to be super, super interesting for traders out there. Traders are going to want to pay attention to this, people who are looking for arbitrage opportunities, because the protocol creates those opportunities, and you can understand how in the white paper. But with the collateral miners, so you've deposited some amount of, let's say, a stable coin. And by doing that deposit, you have a share of this, let's call it, by making that deposit, you have Genius locked in a Genius miner, an advanced miner, that is receiving rewards daily. And so we consider that debt that was issued. So that is Genius that either has to be paid back when your miner ends, or the public can pay it back for you, and you don't owe anything on that part. So the collateral miner, when you start it, you have Genius locked in to an advanced miner, and we consider that Genius debt, and you have a share of the entire debt pool. And this share works differently, but so when you end your miner, right? When you end your miner, let's say 100% of your debt was paid for, you get all of that in Genius. And worst case scenario, none of that debt was paid for. Nobody was interested in the stability pool or Genius itself. You get your collateral back. So it's a very sexy feature.
So essentially, the differences are risk tolerance based and reward based, right? One's a lower risk, lower reward. One's a higher risk, higher reward situation, and then third, the advanced mining and the collateral mining essentially fall into the same bucket with some slight differences, but essentially fall into the same bucket. Do I have that right?
Yes, and you've listened well, and I appreciate that. You summarized it really well.
All right, cool. And what type of rewards are paid out in the three different levels there? I mean, if I come in as a basic miner, right? Let's say I'm somebody that doesn't have a ton to risk. I don't want to take on massive risk. I decide I'm going to put money into establish a basic miner. What type of rewards could that person expect?
Yeah, that's where the tokenomics and game theory come in. It's impossible to know. It depends on, there are some knowns, and I'll let you know about the knowns. But it all depends on human activity, usage, participation. It depends greatly on that. So the one thing that is known, for example, is that in a situation where every single person, it's like Bitcoin mining, but if every single person is mining, right, people are going to get a smaller number of rewards. And, that'll come out to a max of like 4.2% yearly, and about average 4.2% yearly. Just like within Bitcoin mining, if way too many people are mining, then that changes the problem. But with Bitcoin and its hash rate and all that, if miners are dropping, it's not worth it for them to mine anymore. What ends up happening is, as Bitcoin miners leave and turn their machines offline, the miners who stayed online, they end up getting more rewards. And that same dynamic happens with Genius. So you can look at it like, if 4.2% yield on your Genius is not worth it with the protocol, then you leave the protocol. And as you leave the protocol, other people, their rewards are higher and higher.
Makes sense. So it's based off of, the way that the ecosystem is thriving, right? You can't just promise a high APY if nobody's using the ecosystem or people don't want to adopt it, right? Is what you're saying. So, all right. There's so much to unpack here. It's like I have to just take a step back and really think. I mean, about how we choose our time wisely here. We've covered a lot. So just to recap really quick, we've covered the different types of pools. So the different types of as you guys put it, mining. We've covered the different foundational pillars that you guys have built it off of, which are, if I could just scroll up here, it's the pumponomics, the burnonomics, and the third one, I forget what the third one was, how you guys had put it. Oh, the performance rewards, obviously rewarding your community, which, just to touch on that really quick, because I think we blew right past it, but it's something that 99% of projects do not get right, which is the fact that You need to reward your community. You need to create certain type of demand and or buying pressure, and you need to do all of that while creating scarcity. And so that's the foundational pillars that you guys have built the ecosystem on. To recap for that, now you guys have gone through the legacy phase, or what would be the fundraising phase, and now you're moving into what will become the token launching phase in due time, right? Did I miss anything?
No, that's a fantastic summary.
I think it's essentially what we've covered so far. Gabe wants to know if the returns of Geni are in another type of token, maybe what you guys are collateralized with, or is it going to be paid out in Geni? Most likely Geni, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I guess maybe I'm confused here. Are you guys developing your own entire blockchain that's collateralized with like layer 2 EVM chains, or that's what's going on here, right? I mean, even I'm confused.
It's an ERC20 token.
It's an ERC20 token. Okay.
It does these tokenomics all mathematically within the contract.
So how do you reduce the gas 95% on an EVM chain? I mean, we talked about that, right?
So this is our attention to detail on gas savings, quote, and this really was inspired by and came from the Hex community, saying like, oh, come on, how is this any different? And they're like, come on. And, the positive Hex community, right? Different story. But with that, said, well, when you plan tokenomics, right? Like your stuff needs to be useful. I think this is kind of obvious. If the internet wasn't useful, we wouldn't be using it today. If Bitcoin wasn't useful, it would be completely gone and unused today. So at its core, something has to be useful. People have to be able to use it, right? And you have to anticipate. I mean, the better your token, the more you've anticipated things in the future. Like for example, Ethereum had raised like a little more than a year ago, or maybe it was more than a year ago. Time's going by fast. Ethereum had raised the rate, the gas costs, when any of these tokens are reading information from disk. Let's just put it that way. When they're loading information from the blockchain, because that information is important. And so, so this is, I've talked with Vitalik multiple times and Anthony Diorio, and I just feel like this is something very easy to anticipate. But so that happened. The rate of reading from disk changed, and that completely destroyed Hex. For example, it was no longer useful for people who had like $100 stake, because their fees to end their stake ended up being more than the interest that they've earned, and all that stuff. So Hex became less useful because of that. And it was such a big problem that Richard Hart started working on Pulse Chain, which I'm very excited about. I'm very excited about different competitors to Ethereum. So this is where the gas savings idea comes from, or where a lot of it had been discussed, or at least the measurements. So with Genius, there is in the app, under the performance section where you can see the performances, there are calculations that need to be run all the time. I mean, this is like, there's a lot of tokenomics here. There's a lot of math going on. So these calculations need to be run all the time. And so our choice is, do we let the end user run these functions, run these calculations every time that they end their miner? Or do we allow the whole community, do we incentivize the whole community to pre-run these calculations, to do all these pre-calculations for the end users, right? So that's what Genius does. Every day, anyone can be rewarded, 1 to 4 people can be rewarded 10,000 Genius by paying for the gas to run calculations, to pre-run calculations for other people. Now, if you had, let's say you had like 1 million people in the Genius ecosystem, instead of all 1 million people running these same calculations redundantly and over again, you would only need this to be run once. And so this ends up saving people who use the token this is a very novel way of saving people from having to do gas on calculations and reading from the disk, because all that information is summarized and pre-calculated by people who they might not even have a Genius miner. They might be sitting on the sidelines running these gas functions and getting 10,000 to 40,000 Genius as a reward. So if Hex had something like this, the end stake gas fees for Hex will on average be 98 to 99% gas savings. So something that destroyed Hex can't destroy Genius in the same regards. And not to hit it on Hex, but it happens to be an example of why this is useful. And it's rare that you have great examples of where systems fail, because somebody has to fail first for you to show them that example. And Genius has many of these examples, many of these very novel innovations that unfortunately there's no examples of people failing with that yet, but there will be, and there can be.
So, yeah, go.
It just reminds me of some other functionality, like another thing that because that actual issue that Robert just brought up literally affected me on a few stakes. When I first got into Hex, I ran some small tests, with small amounts of money, and then there were very long stakes, and I decided with everything that was happening here recently in the market, okay, let me get out. And literally I ended up with virtually nothing, because the stake or the end stake fee cost the total value almost of the amount that I had staked. So it was very disappointing, even though, looked like I had earned interest. It's a real problem. And then another real problem that I know Robert's mentioned in the past is the one where there's whales that come on and decide to stake for small periods of time. They finish their stakes and then they dump the interest on the market. So there's the math that's set up as far as the kind of adjustment to the end stake fee schedule, as well as the length of time someone can do an advanced miner. Those are in place to solve those kinds of problems. There's all kinds of really detailed tokenomics. And I'll say, knowing Robert for so long, getting to work alongside him for the last 18 months, literally his amazing is, well, specific to crypto, but just in general, is incentivization. So like you said, the pillars of a great project, how do you incentivize the community, keep things running, keep things moving. Robert has literally put in 5 years, along with a number of other tokenomics developers, crafting all of this. Unfortunately, that means a 50-page white paper and, probably what ends up needing to be a multi-hour AMA. But it's super exciting. And I think something, as I've said, he's planned things out for 20 to 50 years from now. So, I
think if you experience it, though, you see it happen. You see the magic happen before you. Just like when you experience Bitcoin, you see that it works and it's awesome. You don't have to sit there and study the tokenomics all day long. But we want to know about it, right? We're scared. We want to know, or maybe we're just curious, right? So there's many reasons why we want to know. But when we see it happen, it's like, wow, how the hell is that happening? That's awesome.
There's so much to unpack here, guys. I mean, what are some of the things that we haven't touched on that you think are important to cover in the short period of time that we have today?
Honestly, I think we've covered the basics, and that's the most important part. And then for a deeper dive, like we literally have, a number of different documents, stuff on the different, how Genius pays better, how the tokenomics are better, stuff, literally one-to-one. That's kind of, unfortunately, compared to Hex, although we don't like to generally do that. A lot of the kind of broader community is after that. We have all that, so, we're always ready in the community, myself, Robert, and literally 100 other people to answer any questions anybody has. So.
I mean, there's obvious similarities, but there's obvious differences to me, right? And there's seems to be more differences than there are similarities. If you want to just explain to us really quick, Robert, before we get into the end and wrap this up, and we'll lead people over into your Telegram so that they can come over there and continue to get educated. if you could just explain to us the proof of benevolence and the proof of exodus and what those two terms mean. I'll put them in the chat as you're explaining it, but just so people can understand those two things. And then I think we can kind of head into I'll go through the anonymous question bot, make sure that we've covered everything, and then we can close out the AMA.
All right, with proof of benevolence, well, these came about for two reasons. Proof of benevolence came from the fact that at times there are whales and there are people that burn their tokens for benevolent reasons. But people may not know that. That may not be known. It may be like, oh, what happened here? Did something go wrong? Did something happen? So all proof of benevolence is it's a way to burn a miner or to burn your tokens for benevolent reasons. So it's a way to signal to the network that, hey, I did this purposely. Because people would say, why would you do that with your value? So it's a way of flagging like, hey, this burning of a Genius miner or burning of Genius tokens, this happened for benevolent reasons and it happened purposely. Oh, okay.
And where would that be? Where would that be, broadcasted if something like that were to happen?
On the Ethereum blockchain, but of course the Genius app would catch that event and broadcast that to its users, or some Genius app, some app that is interfacing with the contract would broadcast that with its users, such as the official one. Now, right. Now proof of exodus came from the fact that, all right, immutable code. Everybody loves immutable code. Some people are probably thinking, what the hell is immutable? It just means that it cannot be changed, cannot be mutated. It's immutable. So what people love about crypto, the biggest hit of crypto, is the fact that there are rules that we're hoping don't change. But if they're immutable and we know that they won't change, we're very excited about it. So immutable code, no admin keys, no pre-mined or pre-allocated developer coins that they can just dump later. These are the top three things about a cryptocurrency. And top three as in whether A, it's a good investment, or B, it's something that you're going to want to use that your use experience won't be screwed with. So proof of exodus, well, so those great things also mean one bad thing, is that you cannot upgrade and cannot update the code. You can update, if you have like that trusted third party, like for example with Uniswap or other protocols out there, while they may have immutable code or they may have some sort of admin key in there, what happens when you have a version 2 come out or a version 3 come out, right? Well, I can tell you that Genius won't have a version 2 or version 3 when it comes to features. But let's say there's a huge problem, right? Like, for example, Ethereum fees change in a way where, it directly impacts someone. Well, proof of exodus came out as a way to be able to upgrade the contract at the discretion of the users. So proof of exodus, it's a advanced concept. However, we have a surprise feature that at launch or shortly after launch, we're going to announce. And what it's going to do is it's going to give an example of many of these things in Genius that don't make a ton of sense. And proof of exodus is something that doesn't make sense. Well, why would I want to prove I'm leaving the system? Well, every crypto that we've had, there can be a time, or many cryptos out there, a lot of them have failed. And a lot of them, people will just get out while they can. But with proof of exodus, you could have a Genius version 2.0 or you could have some other cryptocurrency out there that says, hey, run this function, prove that you're exiting, that you're getting out of the Genius contract, and then you can come onto this contract. And the proof of exodus function does this in a way where it does not impact the tokenomics of the user. And it's basically a big win-win for everybody. Those things will be much more understood in the future when we have examples of this.
I think, how do you think about that metaphor? Like, normally I'd say, regassing a plane, but it's bigger than that. It's almost like there's a plane that's, if you think of various contracts that have fallen in the past, they fall, and then as a community, they have to say, like the community leaders or the founders of the project say, oh shit. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We did a tally of the old, the addresses that held any sort of coins, and we're going to try to onboard people onto a new contract at the same rate. And then if we miss anybody, contact us, prove it, and then it takes days, and sometimes they fuck up. I'm talking about MCC specifically, and then it all falls down completely. Like, it's almost like you're taking a plane, there's a problem mid-flight, and there's another plane comes along, and we can offboard them onto and onboard them onto the new plane. And this function provides for that.
It's extra reassurance for end users, like, emergency exit kind of thing. But at the same time, Genius was built to last 50 years, and to theoretically be able to be around for at least 100 years, right? But let's get very real. Technology changes a lot in the span of 10 years, in the span of 20 years, and 30 years. Technology changes a ton. So therefore, right? Although the longest period that you can have your advanced miner running for is about 12.2 years, future users, and as technology changes, and as different platforms are created, as this happens, right? There may be a reason for Genius to go onto a completely different platform, or go onto a world where there's 30 years plus of technological developments. So thank you for mentioning that. This is a future kind of reassurance. This is a future reassurance that anyone from the community or the world can step up and use Genius's proof of exodus function to bring Genius users, whether they have miners that they still have 5 years left on their commitment, 10 years left of their commitment, or whether there's auctions going on, whatever it is. This is a way where users can be brought over to, like, let's say 50 years of technology improvements in the future. I don't know of anybody else who's thought about that with tokens, but it's pretty important technology-wise.
Well, it's pretty important if you actually care about the longevity and future of something, right? I think the assumption there is that the majority of project owners, developers, actually care about the longevity of the token, which is definitely an assumption, to say the least. I think that's cool. So it's essentially just something that can be used to move you over if need be. Like, let's say, they say Uniswap V3 is coming out, Uniswap V4, I guess, for that regard. Everyone needs to migrate. This is in a click of a button. You guys can move everyone over and resume in the new location, while everyone else will be stuck with their 1,000-year liquidity locks on Uniswap.
Yeah, and it's a way to do it, completely autonomously, decentralized, etc. Like any contract updates or migrations that people have now, it's an attack surface. It's not autonomous, and it trusts an oracle, or it trusts a third party, it trusts another human being. So I think many cryptocurrencies and tokens in the future will see this proof of exodus example, and I see this really becoming a standard in the future of being able to upgrade contracts that are immutable. This allows contracts that cannot be changed to have their end users decide to upgrade or stay where they are without being affected by that upgrade. You had the Ethereum proof of work, right? And the Ethereum proof of stake, you had that fork happen, and people who wanted to stay on one or the other, tokenomically, they were affected greatly. So this is a way where tokenomics, aren't impacted so much.
Guys, this has been ridiculous. This has been ridiculously informative. It's been an incredible AMA to me. I mean, I've even personally learned a lot, which I don't think it's happened on an AMA in a long time. So, very wholesomely, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming in here and introducing the project to the community. I think that you've done a great job educating everybody. This is the type of thing where my biggest concern about this AMA was, that we were going to come in and everything was going to go over everybody's head and nobody was going to learn a single thing, and that would have been that. But you guys were able to deliver everything in a very professional manner, very understandable, in layman's terms, if you will, but also very informative. So to me, that is incredibly impressive. And from the Coin Launch Lounge, we wish you guys nothing but the best of success with the project. Now, we've got a golden question here we ask every project that comes through. Don't listen, I'm not saying you guys fall in this category, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's protocol. So as you guys know, people in DeFi, they suffer from shiny new object syndrome. They like new things and they hop from one thing to the next. There's thousands of projects trying to raise money to go live on a chart, hundreds of projects that launch every single day, and millions of tokens for the people listening to this call to go and stuff their crypto into. My question to you guys is, why should people take you up on the opportunity you're presenting today above other opportunities they have in DeFi?
Robert, if I can, I fall into this bucket.
Yeah, go for it.
Robert he was the first person to get me into crypto in the first place back in 2012. Just briefly in a side conversation, I remember exactly where we were while we were taking a walk. He mentioned he was getting into Bitcoin. I read the white paper, was fascinated by it, amazed by it, looked into it. It solved all kinds of problems that I understood with money and economics, invested in it, and it absolutely changed my life. And since then, I've paid attention to him and his career, what he's done, which has been absolutely mind-blowing in terms of the projects he's worked on, the impact he's had in the space, frankly, the money he's made, the money we both made. He came to me back when this was nothing, so no white paper, no no marketing materials, no understanding of a lot of these concepts, or converting this code into human language has been quite an interesting process. And all along the way, he continues to convince me, and the underlying math and tokenomics continue to convince me that this is very solid, and it's similar, but I'd say much more thought through and well designed from a technical, product coding perspective than anything I've ever seen. So I've certainly put my money where my mouth is and heavily invested in this project. So, go ahead, Rob.
No, what I see is, and that's been quite some time for yourself. What I see is, whenever you're really engaged in learning more and more and investigating more and more about the tokenomics of anything, eventually you find problems, right? Eventually you find problems and you're like, ooh, that's a little unattractive. And right. And so it sounds like what you're saying, Zach, is that hasn't happened for you. And as well, same here, coming from a designer perspective, with other 3 tokenomics individuals, and then as well, 12 plus engineers that we've worked with. As they learn more, as I learn more about Genius as well, I fail to see problems. And I'm looking for problems. I want to find them. But I guess, spending the last 5 or 6 years has just really helped grasp a large area, right? Because what you don't know can often be like your worst enemy. To answer your question, Brian, there's a lot of shiny new objects. And what would I say to other people? I really don't know. This is for, Genius was designed Genius was designed and intended to be a better representation of what value is than even the US dollar, than even any other things we have that represent value. Genius, the questions that started, of course, were philosophical, which is, what is value in the first place? And then that was distilled into math, right? As far as other people, why would you want to get into this and use it? Well, it's taken value very seriously. The app can be used to generate passive income. This is addressing a market that is at least a $25 trillion market, at least $7 trillion in the USA alone. So this is something that a lot of people care about, and Genius is working to address this.
Guys, honestly, thank you very much for coming in. This has been a phenomenal AMA. I'll chalk it up with one of the better AMAs I think we've ever had here in the lounge. So from the Coin Launch Lounge, we wish you nothing but the best of success with this project, obviously. And then on our way out to end the recording, if you guys could just do me a favor, give a call to action to the community, ask them to come join, anything that you guys maybe have going on, how people can get involved. But if you could give the community a call to action, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage everybody to visit our Telegram, t.me/Geni, Geni crypto.
That's pinned.
We have, yep, and we have a ton of community members. It's so amazing. Ready to help answer any questions. Lots of materials. Visit our website, Geni.app, or the community one at geniustoken.com. Twitter is the same thing, Geni Crypto. So. We're all about, if you have any questions, any problems, any like hesitations, we'll talk through them, and we put you at ease. So happy to engage everybody, and thank you very much for having us, Brian. It's been fantastic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. I'd say this is the best AMA so far. Very engaging questions. Thank you. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I must say,
CoinLaunchLounge is awesome.
Appreciate you, Robert. I must say thank you for saying that while the recording was still on. My God. Appreciate it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out. If it's your first time coming in, thanks for stopping in. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. Don't go anywhere, guys. We're going to have some fun, hang out, chill for a little while. Robert, digital, that goes for you also. If you want to continue to answer questions in a relaxed manner without the recording on, then be my guest. I'm sure you might have somewhere to be, but it's completely up to you. It's everyone in here chilling, hanging out. Appreciate you guys. Don't go anywhere. Let's have some fun. If we have that Genius sticker, it's time to party. Can somebody put that in the chat? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Go join their TG.
She want the info. She do. I want crypto.
Okay.